In this lesson I'd like to have a look at how we change the width of columns and the height of rows. So Microsoft have given us several ways that we can actually deal with this. When you've got dates or numbers and there's not enough room in the cells for the numbers or the dates, you get what's known as hashtags. I'm just going to make this one a bit smaller, and you'll see these dates here are now hashtags. So the way to increase or decrease the size of a column visually is by hovering over what we call the size handle, which is the little grey line in between the letters. So you can see the letters up here, and there's a little grey line indicating where the edge of the column is, and if you just hover over it you get what's called a size handle. So it's like a little plus sign with arrows pointing left and right. You hold your left mouse button down and keep it held down, and you can see the actual width popping up there, and with your left mouse button held down, drag across to the right, and when you let go of your mouse button, that increases the width. So if I do the same, hold the left mouse button down and drag to the left, that decreases the width. We can do the same with rows. If we come over to these numbers on the left hand side and hover between the numbers, again it's on the grid line that's going in between the numbers, you now get a size handle with the arrows pointing up and down. Hold your left mouse button, and if you drag that down, that increases the size, and hold the left mouse button and drag it back again, that decreases the size. We get hashtags with dates and numbers, but with text you actually lose the text behind the adjacent cell. If we have a look here, see November, we've lost the end of November under Thursday. We would just need to make that a bit bigger. The problem comes is when you've got lots and lots of data going beyond the bottom of the screen. Of course you can resize based on the bit that you can see, but there's all these other bits of data below the screen. What we do, if I just increase the size of some of these and decrease them, what you do is hover on that fill handle, and instead of dragging it, double click it, and it makes that whole column the right size for the widest set of numbers or data that's inside the cells. So here where we've got the hashtags, if I come up here, double click, that makes it wider. So that's really good. But when you've got a rather big spreadsheet to deal with, so again if I make some of these too small and some of them too big, just to exaggerate it a bit for you, and it's a good idea if you do the same on your one, rather than going across doing these one at a time, meaning you'd have to double click all the way across. If you click, just one click, see this little triangle that's in between the A and the 1, if you just hover over that and click it once, that highlights your whole spreadsheet. Now go to any size handle, so that's the little grey grid line in between the letters, and double click, and that makes the whole spreadsheet the right width for every piece of data that you've got. Often that puts it a little bit too close together, so what I tend to encourage you to do is do that double click and then go and make some of them a bit wider. So for instance, these sets of dates here, that would be quite nice if they were a little bit wider. So if you highlight the columns by hovering over the letter, so we get the little black arrow pointing down, hold your left mouse button, drag across so that they're all highlighted. Now go to any size handle and just make it very slightly bigger, and it makes them all the same size. So these numbers here for in G, H, I and J, we want to do the same there. I'm going to pick I because that's the widest column at the moment, so if I make that column a little bit wider, it makes the others wider. This is a great way to help present your data, and also saves you getting to the printer after printing 50 pages and finding hashtags down on the last 20 pages. You can ensure that all your data is displayed. The other way that you can resize these, if I just highlight this particular column and right click, you've actually got a column width down here on your menu. So if I click that one, it just gives you the width of that column, so that's 11.89. so I can go in there and type say 20, click OK, and that makes that column 20. We can do exactly the same with rows, so I could highlight a few rows, make one of them a bit bigger and it makes them all bigger, or I can right click, go to row height this time, and I'll just bring this up for you here. See, they're all 27, so if I made them say 17, click OK, and they're a bit smaller again. Have a go at that, have a practice, use whatever way you feel is better for you, but certainly the triangle and the double click is a good starting point to make sure all your data is displayed. In this lesson, I'd like to look at how we add new columns and new rows to a spreadsheet. The normal method that a lot of people use is the right click method. So if I wanted to add a new column next to E, and columns are always inserted to the left, so if I right click the E column at the top here, that highlights the column, and then you just click insert and that inserts to the left. If I wanted to delete that, again with it highlighted, I can right click and then come down to delete. So you can do exactly the same for rows. If I want one above row 10, go over to row 10 on the left, right click and then come down to insert, and the row is always inserted above. So row 10 has moved down to 11 and that's inserted a new row. Again, if I want to delete that row, right click and delete. Microsoft have given us more than one way to do the same task. Up on the Home tab, you've got these commands up here, insert and delete. If I want to insert a column, you highlight the column and then come over to insert, and you'll see because we've got a column highlighted, the row insert rows is greyed out, and you can click insert sheet columns and that inserts. The same for delete. With the column highlighted, I can come up to delete, and again the sheet row part is greyed out, and just click sheet columns and that deletes it. But there's another nice way of doing this using the keyboard. So if you want to highlight a column, make sure you've got one cell selected in the column, so column E in this case, and then hold your control down and press your space bar, and that highlights the whole column. If you wanted to highlight a row, then make sure you've got one cell selected in the row that you want, hold the shift down and press the space bar, and that highlights the whole row. To insert a column, I'm going to click one cell in E, hold control down and press the space bar, and that highlights it. And now I want to insert a column. The key combination is control and plus. So if you've got a numeric keypad, you can hold just control and press the plus, because there is a plus key on its own over there. But if you haven't, in my case I haven't here on this particular keyboard, you need to use the equals key, which has got a plus, so you have to shift up to that plus. So I'm going to hold control, shift and plus, and that puts that extra column in. So remember, it's control plus, but if you haven't got a plus on its own, you have to do control shift and then the plus key that's at the top just above the equals. If I wanted to delete that column, so it's highlighted, you just hold your control key down and press the minus key. We can do the same for a row. So if I wanted a row over here, click any cell in the row that I want, shift and space bar highlights it, and then in my case Shift, Control and plus, and there it is, inserted. If I want to delete that, I can just go Control and minus, and there is inserting rows and columns.